A man walked through a dark alley while two men sat on the stairs nearby. One of them said, "Let's go run a hustle," and the other laughed. The main character lived in a studio complex, a 5 pyong or 16.3 square meters rooftop room that was loud and dirty every single day. Holding an instant ramen, he let out a sigh of disappointment because his dinner, once again, was instant ramen. His name was Bong Joo-hyuk, a 25-year-old man working 3 part-time jobs, at a convenience store, a barbecue restaurant, and as a laborer. There was a simple reason why working this hard never allowed him to save any money. Just like many others, it was because of debt. Every cent he earned went toward paying it back, even if it meant living in poverty. He had no special skills, only a healthy body, so he believed there was no bright future waiting for him. As he ate his instant ramen, he accepted that he was nothing more than a mediocre beta male. Then, all of a sudden, a notification appeared in front of him, stating that he had awakened. He froze in shock. A moment later, he shouted, partly because of the hot ramen, and partly because of the notification floating before his eyes. He still could not believe it and wondered if he had truly awakened. People often call awakening a blessing. If someone did well, they could hit a jackpot and completely turn their life around, perhaps an even greater fortune than winning the lottery. But that blessing could only be enjoyed if one stayed alive, and entering the tower was incredibly dangerous. Bong Joo-hyuk was completely a wimp. His mind immediately filled with all the terrifying possibilities inside the tower, being torn to shreds by monsters, freezing or burning to death in extreme environments, getting poisoned or being crushed by a trap, and so on. He always avoided injustice and danger whenever he could. When passing by tugs, he would fake a phone call. He avoided walking under construction sites. For 25 years, he had lived as a lower-tier man, a mere commoner. He slowly put down his chopsticks, wondering whether this was truly awakening or if he had simply dozed off from exhaustion. Then he stretched his arm forward and shouted, "Status window!" His status window appeared right in front of him. It displayed his name, his affiliation marked as black, his current level as 1, and his trait as summon. With that, Bong confirmed that he had truly awakened, and that his trait was summons. An awakener is granted an ability known as a trait. These traits vary widely, including swordsmanship, spearmanship, shielding, archery, fighting spirit, gigantification, smash, summon, heal, and many more. Among them, summon is known for allowing the use of beings such as spirits, phantom beasts, golems, and magic beasts. It is an ability that lets the user utilize specific types of summoned creatures. Bong became curious about what kind of summoner he was. He decided to try using what he imagined would be a cool skill. He shouted, "Skill summon!" Nothing happened. He tried again. Random summon. Still nothing. Then he remembered. Skills cannot be used outside the tower. Player abilities, including skills, are only valid inside the tower and cannot be activated elsewhere. The only exception is the ability to check the system status window. Outside the tower, a player is no different from a normal person. All of this information was common knowledge if one searched the internet, something Bong had completely forgotten. Just as he accepted that skills could not be cast outside the tower, a system message suddenly appeared, stating that it was initiating a random summon. Bong was shocked. A burst of light exploded in front of him, and a red-haired man appeared. He looked exactly like an assassin. Bong stood frozen in confusion. Why was his skill working outside the tower, and why had he summoned a person instead of a typical summoned creature like a spirit or a golem? The red-haired man confirmed that he was indeed a person. Bong's mind was filled with questions. Why had his skill worked outside the tower, and why had he summoned a human? Before he could ask anything, the red-haired man sniffed the air. He had caught the scent of Bong's ramen. He asked if he could have one bite. Bong allowed it. The red-haired man began eating the ramen. Bong thought to himself, that he had summoned a one-bite bandit. After a single slurp, the red-haired man said it was too spicy and wondered if it was a newly released spicy flavor. Bong looked at him in disappointment. It was mild udon. If he thought that was spicy, then he was clearly a spicy wimp. But Bong's mind soon returned to the bigger issue. His skill had worked outside the tower, and he had summoned a human, something he had never heard of before. He opened his status window again. Additional information appeared. He could summon humans and demi-humans with ranks, similar to pulling characters in a gacha game. The ranks ranged from rare, super rare, special super rare, up to legendary, special super rare. It also stated that the summoner and the summoned could communicate smoothly under any circumstances. Another notification appeared, explaining that the summoned adheres to 3 principles. First, the summoned must prioritize and protect the summoner's life. Second, the summoned must absolutely obey the summoner's commands. Third, if Principles 1 and 2 conflict, Principle 1 takes highest priority. Bong was delighted to learn about the absolute obedience. However, he was still curious about the identity of the human he had summoned. Suddenly, information flowed directly into his brain. The summoned's name was John Corsack, also known as the Mad Assassin of the Cruel Guild. His rank was super rare. He was a human assassin and could be resummoned 3 hours after dismissal. John had been the black sheep of the Cruel Assassin Guild, a truly mad assassin. Despite that, his mission success rate was 99%. He had even succeeded in assassinating a 5th Circle black mage. After that, the information became incomprehensible. Bong's head began to ache. Then his eyes shone and his astral form was dragged into John's last memory. John was running straight toward Bong's astral form. He passed through him and attacked 3 people without hesitation. After ending them, he wrapped their heads with red ribbon. Bong watched in disbelief and called him crazy. It looked as if he was wrapping the heads as gifts. At that moment, Bong fully understood why he was called mad. John then tilted his head and looked toward a mansion, the place where he met his end. His death had been caused by a single failure. His target inside the mansion had been the Empire's strongest swordmaster. John's final memory was being cut in half by that swordmaster. Suddenly, everything returned to reality. John appeared behind Bong and whispered, "What are you thinking about?" Bong stumbled and ran away in panic. John immediately apologized and explained that he only wanted to ask if there was anything Bong needed him to do. Though still frightened, Bong reminded himself that the summoned were bound by absolute obedience. There was no need to be scared. He took a deep breath and ordered John to put away the ramen pot and wipe the table. John followed the commands without hesitation. Bong was surprised by how fast John moved and by the fact that he did not complain at all. This confirmed that John truly carried out everything he was told. Bong then called John over and asked whether even ridiculous commands had to be followed. John replied that complete obedience to the words of the summoner was mandatory. Bong decided to test it further. He ordered John to squeak like a dog. John's expression turned serious, and he slowly put down the towel. For a moment, Bong thought he had crossed the line. John had been a powerful figure with immense pride in his previous life. Bong feared he might suddenly snap and attack him. But John followed the order. He squeaked like a dog. Bong felt satisfied. This truly was absolute obedience. He gave John a thumbs up. Then someone began knocking loudly on the door. A voice shouted from outside, confirming that Bong was inside and ordering him to open the door immediately. Bong felt his heart sink. He had forgotten that it was the due date for his interest payment. He quickly ordered John to get up. Bong had borrowed 10 million won. The banks refused to lend him anything, so he had no choice but to turn to a private loan. He used the money for his father's hip fracture surgery after his father slipped on ice, and also to pay for his siblings' university tuition. He believed he could repay it quickly, but even after paying over $5 million, won in interest, the principal remained unchanged. He knew borrowing from them had been a stupid decision, but he had no other choice. Even if he could go back in time, he would make the same decision again. The person outside shouted once more, saying he only wanted to confirm that Bong was still alive. Bong turned to John. The assassin had already drawn his knives, silently waiting for the command to sever the people outside. Bong immediately refused. He understood that John would create a massive problem in the future. Bong pushed John toward the bathroom and ordered him to hide, keep his mouth shut and not move an inch or make a sound. John calmly asked if he was still allowed to breathe. Bong told him yes. After that, Bong opened the door. A thug wearing a golden necklace stood there. He said he was glad Bong was safe, as he had been worried when the interest payment had not come in that day. Bong nervously apologized and admitted that he had forgotten. He quickly proceeded to transfer the payment. The thug then told Bong not to overdo it. If money became too tight, he suggested that Bong sell his organs and get comfortable living with just one kidney. Another man standing outside added, "Doesn't he have a younger sibling, boss?" The boss nodded and said a sibling would be fine, since younger ones fetch a higher price. Bong felt fury rising inside him. The man with the golden necklace suddenly narrowed his eyes and asked what was with Bong's expression. It looked as if he was about to strike him. Bong forced out a laugh and said there was no way he would ever dare to do that. The thugs finally left, warning Bong to be careful, unless he wanted to disappear without a trace. Once they were gone, John stepped out of the bathroom. Bong felt a strange sense of pride at how well John had hidden himself. John calmly explained that he had only followed the order given to him. Bong suddenly felt exhausted. After working 2 part-time jobs, experiencing his awakening, summoning a human, and dealing with debt collectors, all in one day, his body and mind were drained. He wondered if he truly needed to climb the tower to repay his debt. The money would be great, but someone like him climbing the tower, it felt impossible. He was afraid. John then asked what they should do next. Bong did not know either. He asked John if he wanted to go back, offering to use summon dismissal on him. John raised his hand and asked if he could watch some TV, since it had been a long time since he had seen one. Bong found it strange that his summon knew about TV and even ramen, but he saw no reason to refuse. So he agreed. John thanked him and began watching free episodes of a drama, while Bong lay down on his bed to rest. As he watched John from the corner of his eye, Bong realized something. Even though John was a summoned entity, it did not feel bad having someone beside him. It was oddly comforting. He had been working himself to death alone all this time. Not long after, Bong fell asleep. He woke up around 8. John was nowhere to be seen. Bong assumed he had been dismissed. The manifestation period was only 6 hours. He vaguely remembered that a system window might have appeared while he was half asleep. He then stood up, and Bong muttered that, awakened or not, he still had to get ready for work. As he brushed his teeth, breaking news suddenly played on the TV. He listened absent-mindedly at first. The report was about the office of an illegal private loan agency called Smile Cash. A grotesque murder had occurred there. The name sounded familiar to him. The news anchor continued. There were 3 victims, all found decapitated. Then came the final detail. All the victims' heads had been decorated with red ribbons. Bong's toothbrush slipped from his hand and hit the floor. He froze in shock. The image from John's last memory flashed through his mind, the red ribbons wrapped neatly around severed heads. A chill ran down his spine. Bong realized, with horror, that his summon was a complete psycho.